Hey, it's Darryl Syms, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can use the CAGED system to help you solo over a blues chord progression. Now, the information that I'm going to share with you today will help you solo over any chord progression, but I just figured that I'm going to choose blues today since it is actually quite easy to get your head around because the function of all the chords in a blues progression are exactly the same. Just before we begin the video, I want to invite you to come and check out my CAGED fretboard visualization masterclass, which you'll find a link to in the description below, which is an incredibly useful tool to help you visualize the entire neck. And if you find that you're following along with this video, but you'd like to take this to the next level and branch out even farther, then this masterclass is for you. Everything that I share with you throughout this video is going to be relevant to a very typical and standard A blues. So that's going to involve 3 dominant 7th chords. That's A7. You might play it like this. And then we've got D7 and E7. Okay. So the first thing that we need to do is choose an appropriate scale which works over this chord progression, or at least one chord at a time. Now for the A7 chord, there is one golden scale that will work over that and will sound fantastic, and that is the Mixolydian scale, or Mixolydian mode. If you know anything about modes, that's the 5th mode of a major scale. And the reason that Mixolydian is the best choice when playing over a dominant 7 chord is because the scale contains these chord tones: the 1, the major 3rd, the 5th, and the flat 7. The full formula for the scale is in fact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, which is almost identical to your major scale besides the flat 7. So if we play that from the A note here, we'd have, and then back to your octave, and we'll play that to cover the entire vertical position there, so across the next octave. There's the flat 7, take note to that. So that there is your Mixolydian scale in one position of the neck, which actually reflects an E major shape from the CAGED system. Now what we're going to do next is to form an arpeggio here, which would be the best notes to choose throughout your improvisation. These are chord tones, and they're going to consist of, well, all of your chord tones, your 1, 3, 5, and flat 7. So we're going to follow the vertical position and follow the order of notes throughout the scale. Starting from the root note, we would have root, major 3rd, 5, flat 7, and then we're going to repeat. Root, major 3rd, 5, flat 7, back to your root. So again. Take a moment to pause the video and get used to that. Get used to the fingering, and also make sure that you understand the function of each of these notes. It's very important. Don't just solely rely on the finger memory here. So you'll see that that arpeggio has a very dominant sound to it, which is going to be very useful as a template when improvising over that particular chord. Now that arpeggio contains 4 of a total 7 notes that's available in the Mixolydian scale, the A Mixolydian. And those remaining 3 notes that aren't within the arpeggio are what's called tension notes, which doesn't mean that these notes are wrong or incorrect. I do recommend that you use them, and I encourage that you find a nice balance between chord tones and tension tones, because if you have too much weight on one side, you'll find that your improvisation or your solo will sound too perfect and too predictable, or if you're using all the tension tones and not really touching the chord tones, it's not really going to sound like you're playing with the chords, despite your note choices being somewhat correct. Over the 1 chord, if you were to play the minor pentatonic scale, it would work, but the scale has a strong tendency to resolve to the major 3rd because the parent chord here, the A7, contains the major 3rd. So if we, we want to hammer on to resolve the sound of that minor to major 3rd there. But over the 4 chord, you can get away with really taking advantage of that minor 3rd sound there. Now that leads me on to the 4 chord. We know the chord tones for the 1 chord, but if we were to play over the 4 chord, the function of these notes would be entirely different, as we've just explored. Now what you could do is move this shape up the neck to the D and do the same thing. But that's not a very sensible way of doing it, let's say, because the last thing that you want to do is use the same shapes just moving up and down the neck. It's not very strategic, and it's not very helpful when trying to see how each chord and scale relates to each other. So we're going to stick within one position of the neck right now. So we know that our 4 chord looks like this. And if we were to play Mixolydian starting on this note, so it's D Mixolydian now, no longer A Mixolydian, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. And that reflects an A shape, an A position from the CAGED system. So once again, just pause the video and take a moment to explore that. Make sure that you're aware of the position of your intervals and the function of each of them relevant to D7. Now the arpeggio, which reflects this chord, sounds like this. Starting on the root note, we're going to go root, 3, 5, flat 7. So take a moment to learn that, get that down. Find your own way around that. And remember, we're going to use that as a template to work around when playing over these chord changes. So you're now able to play the Mixolydian scale and target the chord tones over the A7 and the D7 chords, the 1 and the 4 chord, but we've still got the 5 chord to explore. And rather than just shift the same shape up a whole step, we're going to keep within this vertical position and rather play a C shape, 5 chord now, or C position. So starting from your little finger, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay, and if we turn that into a dominant 7 arpeggio, we would have 1, 3, 5, flat 7. So take a moment to get used to that, and altogether, if you play each of those arpeggios, you should really be able to hear the chords that you're playing over without actually even playing the chords. So we're at the point now where you're able to play the 3 arpeggios which work perfectly over these 3 7th chords, and you'll be able to highlight a 12-bar blues without actually even playing the chords, which is a really awesome place to be able to do this, okay? But now we need to be a little bit less robotic, lighten up a bit, introduce some tension tones to make it a bit more musical rather than, you know, ascending and descending arpeggios as quickly and wonderfully as we can. So in order to make this a bit more musical, use the arpeggio sequences as a template and then find the tension tones that exist around that to help you move around freely. So for example, once you're feeling super confident with this so far in this position of the neck, your next challenge is to translate all of this information to the next position of the neck, or the previous one, until you're confident at covering everywhere in your neck, and then of course you can blend all that together. Now in order to do this, if you're familiar with the CAGED system, you'll be able to go from the E shape here, or the E position, moving that up to the D. And we'll use a similar approach. We can first play our major scale and just flatten that 7th degree to give us the Mixolydian scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. and then we can, within that, build our dominant 7 arpeggio, going from 1, 3, 5, flat 7. And then of course repeat the same process with the 4 chord, which we had an A position arpeggio from. We could move that to the G position, next position of the neck, and then we would have and then of course we can do the same with the 5 chord, which we would just go from the C shape to the A shape to keep it within this position of the neck. And you already know the A shape. And then, once again, it's in your hands to run through this entire process in this position. Once you're happy with that, move on to the next one, and so forth. So there you have it. Best of luck with this. I hope you managed to take away a bunch of awesome things to implement into your practice. Once you feel like you've got the hang of this in this one area or position of the neck, you can translate this information to other areas of the neck, perhaps even try a different key. And I recommend that you practice this daily if you really want to absorb this information and be able to improvise well on the fly. So best of luck. If you give this a try and you happen to post a video online, especially on Instagram, please tag me at Darryl Syms. I would love to see what you've taken away from this video. Until next time, I will see you in the next video.